We talk about the US relationship with Israel quite a bit on this show. And it's no surprise to anyone who watches this show regularly that one of the biggest issues that both Cenk and I have is the fact that you have this small foreign government exerting undue influence over our political system. I mean, to the point where it doesn't matter if the administration in charge is Democrat or Republican, they will do Israel's bidding. So what do we, the people, what do Americans do about it? And joining us now is Michael Rechtenwald, who is a professor, author, and founder of the Anti-Zionist America PAC. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Anna.
My pleasure. So I've been curious about your project for some time. I have some potential concerns, which we'll get to in just a minute. But I think that, you're coming at this in good faith. I think you see what's happening with our government and the undue influence that Israel has over our government. You want to do something about that. So let me just start off by asking you, what does AZAPAC seek to do?
Well, in simple terms, we seek to de-Zionize the US government by removing from the political class all the Zionists in government. And that way we can, thwart the efforts of Israel to continue extorting taxpayers. And, I think, our political class, as you mentioned, I think is blackmailed first and bribed as well. And we're trying to remove those people from office by running candidates that are anti-Zionist or non-Zionist.
Just on the blackmail point real quick, the latest tranche of heavily redacted Epstein files came out just last week on Friday. And there's a lot of talk about how Epstein was likely working for intelligence, very likely Mossad and the CIA. He was obviously making all sorts of deals on behalf of Israel, especially when it came to procurement of cyber weapons and things like that, and cybersecurity. But, for people who think that's like crazy and outlandish, there's no way that's going on. I just want to remind you all that Benjamin Netanyahu, of all people, in the middle of the negotiations over a two-state solution, attempted to blackmail Bill Clinton with dirt about the Monica Lewinsky scandal. This is prior to it being public knowledge. So the blackmail definitely exists, and we have a clear example of that. And Israeli papers wrote about it. In fact, I caught that story again today, researching over at the Times of Israel. So with that in mind, when did you first realize that Israel has the type of influence over our government that it does?
Well, I thought it did for quite a while, going back all the way back to John F. Kennedy, really. But I think that with the Trump administration, the mask really came off. And we saw, nothing but this obsequious subservience to Israel on everything. And not only in deed, but also in word. The constant supplications to Israel and the constant deference to Israeli interests. It became so obvious. And then with the Gaza genocide, I thought, this political class, it must be completely in Israel's control to be doing what they're doing. And I just couldn't stand by and watch this without doing something about it. All the efforts that people are making are noble. Everything needs to be done, but I figure this is one of the necessary, essential parts of the puzzle in order to change this situation, to de-Zionize the government so that we stop the depredations that Israel, depredations that Israel enacts on its neighbors, and most immediately its Palestinian neighbors. If we didn't have the United States enabling Israel like this, they wouldn't be able to do this.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. So far we are in total agreement. Now, you come from the right side of the political spectrum, and I think it's important for our audience to know that. And I'm actually really curious about what you've seen with Republican voters in the country and whether you've seen a bit of an evolution when it comes to that voting base on this specific topic. Because I was under the impression that the only people in the country who cared about the influence of Israel over our politics was the left. But I'm actually noticing that a lot of Republican voters are actually very concerned about it. Is that a new thing, or do you think this has always existed, but I was just kind of in the dark about it?
No, I think it's pretty new. And it's very well known that the left has been much more organized about Zionism for years, for decades, and has been after this for quite some time. I come from the right, but I'm more or less a libertarian. So I'm a right libertarian. And as such, everything that's being done for Israel and by Israel is a violation of our basic premise or principle of the non-aggression principle, which they are violating regularly. And to the point about the right, and I saw, well, first of all, I figured that, look, this problem has to be solved partly from the right, because it is the right wing that is the bulwark for Israel. Not only the voting for them, but also their rhetorical backup. It's providing political cover for them no matter what they do. So I thought we need something that attacks this not only from the left, but from the right, that goes after Republican candidates and goes after Republican office holders to try to break up this unbelievably solid block of Zionists that run the country.
So through AZAPAC, the goal here, the objective is to, I'm guessing, primary incumbents who are pro, Israel or Israel first, and do so with candidates who have sworn off that type of Israeli influence. Tell me a little bit about the types of candidates. Like, what kind of standards do you have when you're kind of testing whether a candidate is a good fit to be supported by AZAPAC?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing is, of course, that they swear off any Zionist or Israeli money from PACs or lobbies, that they promise not to take any Israeli or Zionist money. The second is they have to promise not to send arms or aid to Israel. And we have a questionnaire that we ask all the candidates to answer. It's like a 19-point questionnaire, where it's basically yes or no, but a lot of them like to expound quite prolifically and tell us everything they think. And it's, we can tell from the candidates' responses just how serious they are. And then, of course, we also are interested in their viability. We can't support, we'll endorse some people that we don't think have a chance just for symbolic value. But we really want to support economically, financially, candidates that have a shot. So, for example, we're running a candidate is running, and we're backing him in Florida against Randy Fine. It's Aaron Brown, and he's primarying Randy Fine. And the only way they're going to get an anti-Zionist in office from that district is if he's a Republican. So it's the only choice. And then on the other hand, so just to show that we are nonpartisan, we're also supporting Jose Vega, who's running in New York against Richie Torres.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's amazing. Yeah. I thought you were mostly focusing on, red districts, but you're doing this in a bipartisan fashion.
Yes,
that's really good to hear. I love that. Yeah.
And we also supporting a libertarian candidate, and we're going to be supporting a green candidate very soon, Greg Stoker, who was on one of the flotillas.
Oh, wow.
We're also supporting Anthony Aguilar, who was the whistleblower on the Gaza humanitarian aid, or whatever they call that obscene misnomer of an organization. He's the one that blew the whistle, saying they were luring Palestinians to these supposed food distribution sites and then shooting them. So we've got some strong candidates that we're running and that we're supporting, I should say, and we try to be utterly impartial about party. I don't care about party, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Libertarian. Do you have the right principles, and do you have any chance of actually overthrowing the candidate in office?
Now, look, you have a significant uphill battle here, because when you think about the war chest that the Zionist movement provides for these candidates, I mean, it's very daunting to think about raising enough money to compete with them. But how has the fundraising been so far?
It's been really strong. We released like a introductory video in November, and it went viral, and it brought in a lot of donations. And they continue to this day. We're doing pretty well. I would say that if we could get like 50 million Americans to donate $5, will be in the game big time. Now, we're not going to get 50 million Americans just because that's not possible. So if we get 1 million Americans to donate $250, then we are in the game against AIPAC, believe it. And because I've looked at the numbers and what they're spending, and we can compete with that. We're trying to pool the resources of Americans. It's a grassroots movement, and we know we don't have billionaires to throw at money at us, but American concerned citizens, a grassroots base, is very interested in this problem and wants to overturn it, wants to solve this problem. And so we're counting on that grassroots. And speaking of left, right, and all that, look, our idea is that we need to punch up, not across the aisle. We need to punch up against the ruling class. Let's be real. I mean, the ruling class is a Zionist ruling class. So that's what we're up to, and that's our attitude, and that's what our philosophy is.
So I have to ask you, because there are people in the media space, especially, where you'll hear the arguments they're making against Zionism, and then you dig a little deeper and you will find some hate toward Jewish people, right? Sure. And I don't subscribe to any of that, because first of all, some of the strongest anti-Zionist voices are Jewish, right? Indeed. So Jeffrey Sachs, I'm sorry, wrong Sachs, but yeah, Jeffrey Sachs is amazing.
Of course, Finkelstein, of course.
Finkelstein is amazing, yes. So what would you say to people who might be hesitant to work with someone who's not on the left, right? Whether they're libertarian or right, they're worried that what motivates them isn't necessarily concern about Zionism having undue influence over our politicians, but through dislike of Judaism or Jewish people.
Well, I mean, the PAC itself has a very clear standard on that. We don't talk about the Jews or anything like that. This isn't about Judaism. We make it very clear. Zionism is a political ideology. Arguably, from some of the people that we're associated with that are Jewish, like the Voice of Rabbis and other types of groups, they say Zionism has hijacked as Judaism. And so I will believe that. And so we're not anti-Judaism or anti-Jewish. We're not anti-Semitic. We make clear on the website what Zionism means to us, which is simply from the American standpoint. Zionism means the bribery and blackmail of our political class and the extortion of American taxpayers for the benefit of Israel. That's it. And we also say we don't even take a stand on whether Israel should exist. So there's no from the river to the sea rhetoric at all. It's simply about the internal politics of the United States.
Okay, that's great. So I do have to ask you about, two tweets, if you don't mind. And okay. Look, I love what you're doing, and I'm not trying to do like, ooh, gotcha journalism, because I think, based on this conversation, I can tell that you actually want to do something to save our country and the ridiculous debt that we're in as a result of these wars that we fought on behalf of Israel. Like, it's a real problem. So,
and I'd like to spare some lives too in the Middle East.
Exactly. So I'm on your side, but this is cause for concern for me personally, and I'm sure to other people. And I want you to be able to kind of clear it up. So you had tweeted in October 10th, 2024, the Jewish elite must be stopped. They must be physically removed. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, well, that was a joke, actually. And it was a play on Hans Hermann Hoppe, who's a libertarian philosopher and thinker, where he talks about physical removal. It's a meme on X. And this is where context is all important. And people would see that, not understand the context, where he jokes about physically removing people from a from a private property society. And there's this meme with a helicopter dropping people out of it, stuff like that. So it was kind of a joke. What I meant was that, and I'm talking about what Finkelstein calls directly the Jewish supremacist billionaire class, which he says is running the country. And so, it isn't targeting Jews per se. This is a particular milieu, a very small section of people who have a tremendous amount of power, like the Adelsons, like the people that are attacking Thomas Massey.
Yep.
Yeah, all those.
No, I get what you're saying.
And the rest. So that's what I was referring to, but largely it was tongue in cheek. It was a play, and it was meant for people that understand the Hans Hermann Hoppe meme.
Have you talked to Norm Finkelstein at all about AZAPAC? Like, is it something he's interested in?
We have reached out to him. We haven't been able to contact him yet, but if we did, we would welcome him on our board. We would love to have Max Blumenthal on the board. These are people that we would welcome with open arms. I think Max Blumenthal is one of the most brilliant anti-Zionists there is, and the most strident. And
he's pretty strident. There's no question about that.
Strident, and so is Norm. Norman Finkelstein, yes. Very strident. They have on his website, on his Facebook page, people have posted the AZAPAC stuff, the videos and stuff like that. So I think he's probably aware of us. We'd like to get in touch with him and work with him. Absolutely, we would love his advice, his knowledge base. I think we need to have a think tank really to do this work. It's more than a PAC. I think we need to become like develop a think tank about how to approach this problem, because there's so many layers to it: rhetoric, money, political cover, all that's being done. So yeah, we would love to have somebody like Finkelstein or Max Blumenthal involved.
All right, I'll end on a broader question because I am curious about this. I think that the bribery that is now legalized and baked into our political system is terrible. I think it's the virus that has dismantled our democratic process. But we're dealing with the system that we have. And I would know, since I work so closely with Cenk, how difficult it is to undo the damage of these Supreme Court rulings and push for a constitutional amendment to get money out of politics.
Yes.
But is that something that you would want to strive for, getting the money out entirely?
I would like nothing better than to be able to dissolve this PAC if money was out of politics. That's my preference. Get money completely out of politics. But in the meanwhile, we got to be realistic, and this is the game we're in. And so this is kind of a realist position that, look, money is completely controlling the political class in the United States. So what are we going to do? Just let it happen, or are we going to try to counter it? And that's what we're trying to do, is to counter it. But nothing would please me more than to say all of this lobbying, all these PACs, all of these special interests, like that really came about through Citizens United in 2010. Which is an interesting point, because they said that spending money was expression. And yet 37 states in the United States ban BDS, which is also expression. So, we're looking to get standing in one or more of these states, and to sue these states for violating the First Amendment.
Oh, I would love that. I would love that. I mean, I love that you did that juxtaposition of like the Supreme Court calling money in politics speech, but when it comes to like voting with your dollar, essentially boycotting Israeli businesses, that's illegal now in much of this country. It's crazy.
I mean, you can't get a state contract. So we need to get somebody that tries to get a state contract to do something and gets turned down because they won't sign the anti-BDS pledge or whatever it is in that particular state.
Well, Michael, I appreciate that you're looking for solutions. It's a difficult problem to solve. And look, right now it's obviously about Israel because of how influential Israel is in our own country. But this applies to every foreign country. No foreign country should be prioritized over the American people. So thank you for your time, and good luck.
Oh, thanks so much, Anna. Good to talk to you.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.